Hello, and a huge welcome to the channel. If you're looking for cross-dressing stories that are emotional, intriguing, and truly empowering, you've come to the right place. If you keep running on testosterone, you'll be dead in 6 months. The words didn't land like a sentence. They landed like a physical blow, right in the center of my chest. I sat frozen on the edge of the exam table. The paper crinkled loudly under my thighs, a sharp, annoying sound that seemed too loud in the small, white room. The air conditioner hummed above us, blowing a draft of cold air directly onto the back of my neck, making the hair on my arms stand up. I looked at Dr. Elena Martinez. She wasn't looking at her clipboard anymore. She was looking right at me, her dark eyes steady, unblinking behind her wire-rimmed glasses. She didn't look malicious. She looked exhausted, like she had practiced saying this line in the mirror before walking in here. "Excuse me," I managed to choke out. My voice sounded rough, scratching against a dry throat. "I think I misheard you." "Dr. Sosje," Martinez sighed. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees, closing the distance between us. The smell of antiseptic and faint vanilla lotion drifted off her. "Edwin," she said softly, "your latest blood work confirms it. It's an extremely rare autoimmune reaction. Your body has identified your own androgens, your testosterone, as a foreign pathogen, a toxin." I laughed. It was a short, sharp bark of a laugh that had no humor in it. "So, what I'm allergic to being a man?" "In layman's terms, yes." She didn't smile. "Your immune system is attacking your organs every time your T levels spike. Your liver is already showing signs of distress. Your kidneys are next. If we don't stop the production and reception of testosterone immediately, your system will go into total failure." My hands were gripping the edge of the exam table so hard my knuckles had turned white. I could feel the metal digging into my palms. I looked down at my legs. They were covered in thick denim, heavy work jeans stained with a bit of grease from the garage. I looked at my arms, the hair dark against my skin, the veins prominent in my forearms. This was me, Edwin Parker, 34 years old, systems engineer. I fixed things. I built things. I drank dark roast coffee and spent my weekends hiking the Rockies. "Okay," I said, trying to engage the logical part of my brain. "So, we suppress it. Give me a pill. I'll take a blocker or something." "Doctor?" Martinez shook her head slowly. The movement made my stomach drop. "It's not enough to just block it. Edwin, your body is in a state of emergency. We need to suppress the testosterone completely, to zero. But a human body cannot survive without sex hormones. Your bone density will crumble. Your heart will weaken. Your cognitive function will crash." She paused, letting the silence stretch out. I could hear the ticking of the analog clock on the wall. Tick, tick, tick. "We have to replace it," she said. "Replace it with what?" "Estrogen." The word hung in the air between us. I stood up. I couldn't sit there anymore. I paced to the small window. Looking out at the parking lot, I saw my truck parked in the second row. It was a massive, dirty Ford F-150. It looked solid, real. "You want to give me female hormones," I said. My back to her. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. A flush of anger and humiliation. "I want to save your life." She corrected. "We need to start you on a high-dosage regimen of estradiol and anti-androgens immediately. Essentially, we are inducing a hormonal transition. It's the only way to trick your immune system into standing down." I turned around. "For how long a month, too?" Dr. Martinez didn't answer immediately. She picked up a pen and clicked it. Click. Click. "Ideally, indefinitely." "Indefinitely," I repeated. My brain was misfiring. "You're telling me that to stay alive. I have to turn into a woman. You are still you. Edwin, your memories, your skills, your personality, that is in your brain. But biologically, Yes. Your body will feminize. Your fat distribution will shift. Your muscle mass will decrease. You will develop breast tissue. Your skin will soften. She was listing these things like she was reading a grocery list. Milk, eggs, breast tissue. I felt a wave of nausea roll over me. I leaned back against the windowsill for support. The collar of my starch-stiff button-down shirt felt like a noose tightening around my throat. I tugged at it, popping the top button. "I can't do that," I whispered. I'm not trans. Doc, I don't have an issue with who I am. I like being a guy. I am a guy." "I know," she said, her voice gentle now. "I know this is unfair. It is a cruel biological twist. But Edwin, look at me." I forced my eyes up. "If you walk out of here and do nothing, you will be in the ICU within 8 weeks. You will be dead within 6. There is no third option." I stared at her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table over. I wanted to punch the wall. But I didn't. I just stood there, breathing shallowly, feeling the heavy leather of my belt cutting into my waist, reminding me of the body I was currently inhabiting. The body that was trying to kill me. The drive home was a blur. I didn't remember starting the truck. I didn't remember paying for parking. I just found myself on I-25 gripping the steering wheel so tight my hands were cramping. Traffic was gridlocked. Brake lights stretched out in front of me like a river of red magma. I sat in the silence of the cab, the engine idling with a low, masculine rumble beneath me. I looked in the rearview mirror. The eyes staring back were familiar, dark brown, tired, framed by thick eyebrows. There was a shadow of stubble on my jaw I hadn't shaved since yesterday morning. I rubbed my chin. The sound was like sandpaper. Scritch. Scritch. It was a comforting texture, rough, durable. "Your body will feminize." The phrase echoed in my head, bouncing around my skull. I slammed my hand against the steering wheel. "Damn it!" The driver in the car next to me glanced over, startled. I ignored him. I felt trapped, not just in traffic, but in my own skin. My skin, which Dr. Martinez said was currently a battlefield. I looked down at my chest. Beneath the plaid shirt and the white undershirt, I was flat, hard. I went to the gym 3 times a week. I could bench press 220. I was proud of that. I worked hard for that. And now, it was poison and my strength was my sickness. A tear leaked out of my eye. I angrily wiped it away with the back of my hand. It felt hot and stupid. Men don't cry in traffic. Edwin Parker doesn't cry in traffic. But Edwin Parker was dying. My apartment was dark when I got in. I didn't turn on the lights. I just threw my keys on the counter. The metal clatter echoed in the empty living room. It smelled like cedar and stale pizza in here. It was a bachelor's apartment. Leather sofa, big TV, a stack of car magazines on the coffee table, a half-built computer tower on the dining table, wires spilling out like guts. I walked straight to the bathroom and flipped the switch. The fluorescent light flickered once, then buzzed to life, casting a harsh, clinical glare over the white tiles. I locked the door. I didn't know why. I lived alone, but I felt exposed. I started to strip. I unbuckled my belt, hearing the heavy clink of the metal tongue. I pulled it through the loops, the leather sliding with a familiar friction. I kicked off my boots. They landed with a heavy thud. I peeled off my socks, then my jeans, then the shirt. Finally, I stood there in just my boxer briefs. I looked in the mirror. I really looked. I saw broad shoulders. I saw the hair trailing from my navel down into my waistband. I saw the definition of my biceps as I crossed my arms. I reached out and touched my reflection. The glass was cold. "This is it," I whispered to the empty room. I ran my hands over my chest. The skin was firm, stretching over muscle and rib. I tried to imagine what Dr. Martinez had said. Breast tissue. I squeezed my eyes shut. A shudder went through me, a physical rejection of the image. I couldn't imagine it. It felt grotesque. It felt like a violation. But then, a sharp pain spiked in my side, right under my ribs. My liver. A reminder. I gasped and doubled over, gripping the sink for support. The pain was throbbing, hot and insistent. It was my body screaming at me. I am killing you. It said, change or die. I looked up again. My face looked pale in the harsh light. I looked scared. I looked like a little boy who had gotten lost in a department store. I opened the medicine cabinet. Inside, next to the razor and the shaving cream, was the prescription Dr. Martinez had shoved into my hand before I left. I had stopped at the pharmacy in a daze. I hadn't even looked at the bottles until now. I took out the orange bottle. The label was crisp and white. Estradiol, 2 milligrams, take twice daily. The pills were small, oval, a soft, harmless blue color. They looked like candy. They looked like nothing. I shook one out into my palm. It sat there, tiny and innocent, in the center of my calloused, rough hand. I stared at it. For a long time, 5 minutes, 10. If I swallowed this, I was crossing a line. I was walking through a door that would lock behind me. If I swallowed this, Edwin, the Edwin I knew, the Edwin who played football in high school, the Edwin who liked his beard, was going to fade away. But if I didn't, I thought about my sister, Rachel. I thought about the unfinished server project at work. I thought about the sun coming up over the mountains in the morning. I wasn't ready to die. God, I wasn't ready to die. My hand was trembling. I could see the tremors running up my wrist. I'm sorry, I whispered to my reflection. I'm so sorry. I didn't know who I was apologizing to, the man in the mirror, or the woman who was going to take his place. I turned on the tap. The water ran cold and clear. I filled a glass. I put the pill on my tongue. It tasted like chalk. I squeezed my eyes shut tight, tilted my head back, and swallowed. The water washed it down. I felt it slide down my throat, cool and final. I stood there, gripping the sink, waiting for the lightning to strike, waiting for the world to end. But nothing happened. The bathroom fan just kept humming. The drip in the shower kept dripping. Plip. Plip. I looked at the mirror one last time. The man looking back was exactly the same as he was 10 seconds ago. But we both knew the truth. The clock had started. The poison was gone. But something else was taking root. I turned off the light, plunging the room into darkness. The cold got me first. It was the middle of May in Colorado. It should have been 60 degrees and sunny. But I was sitting in my cubicle at the engineering firm, wearing a thick wool sweater over my dress shirt, shivering so hard my teeth were practically vibrating. Clack, clack, clack. I typed a line of code, messed it up, and backspaced furiously. My fingers felt stiff. Hey, Ed, you okay? You look like you're on an Arctic expedition. I looked up. It was Mark, one of the junior devs. He was wearing a polo shirt, short sleeves. He looked comfortable. He looked warm. I'm fine, I snapped. My voice cracked. Not a puberty crack, but a weird, thinned-out sound that didn't seem to come from my chest anymore. I cleared my throat, trying to find the bass. Just fighting a bug. Chills. Right. Hope you feel better. Man. Mark walked away, looking back once with a confused expression. I slumped in my chair, pulling the sleeves of the sweater down over my hands. It had been 6 weeks since I swallowed that first blue pill. 6 weeks of chemical warfare inside my body. Dr. Martinez had warned me. Your metabolism will slow down. Your skin will thin. You will lose the thermal protection of testosterone. She hadn't told me that the air conditioning vent above my desk would start to feel like an ice pick driving into my spine. I rubbed my arm. Through the wool, I could feel my skin. It was different. The rough, oily texture I had lived with for 34 years was gone. In its place was something dry, soft, and terrifyingly smooth. It felt like someone else's arm. That night, the emotional dam broke. I was heating up a frozen lasagna in the microwave. The timer beeped. Beep, beep, beep. I reached in to grab the tray, and the plastic film caught on the roof of the microwave. The tray tipped. Hot tomato sauce splattered across the counter and onto the floor. It was a small mess, a nothing mess. Edwin from 2 months ago would have cursed, grabbed a paper towel, and moved on. But this Edwin. I stared at the red sauce on the white linoleum. My throat tightened. A hot, prickling sensation started behind my eyes. "No," I whispered. "Don't do this." But I couldn't stop it. My chest heaved. A sob ripped out of me, violent and wet. I slid down the cabinets until I was sitting on the kitchen floor, knees pulled to my chest, weeping over spilled lasagna. I cried because the lasagna was ruined. I cried because my favorite jeans didn't fit right anymore. I cried because I was alive. That was the worst part. The gnawing, grinding pain in my liver, the one that had been my constant companion for months, was gone. My energy was coming back. I could walk upstairs without getting winded. The cure was working. I was healthy, and I was miserable. "Get a grip," I choked out, wiping my face. My cheeks were wet, and my skin felt so sensitive that the friction of my own palms stung. "You're a grown man. Stop crying." But the tears kept coming, fueled by a chemical tide I couldn't control. Estrogen wasn't just changing my body, it was rewiring my brain. It was stripping away the emotional numbness I hadn't even realized I was relying on. It was like someone had turned the color saturation of the world up to maximum, and it was blinding me. The next morning, the war with my wardrobe began. I stood in front of my closet, staring at the row of button-down shirts, blue, white, grey, plaid. The uniform of a man who knows who he is. I reached for a blue Oxford shirt, heavy cotton, starched stiff. I put it on. As soon as the fabric touched my shoulders, I flinched. It felt like sandpaper. The seams dug into my armpits. The collar felt like a plastic ring clamping around my neck. I buttoned it up, my fingers fumbling. I tucked it into my slacks and cinched my leather belt. I looked in the full-length mirror. The clothes looked the same, but the body underneath them was rebelling. My waist had pinched in, just slightly, but enough that the pants bunched up awkwardly around the hips. My chest, usually a flat plane of muscle, felt tender and swollen. The heavy cotton shirt pressed against my nipples, and a jolt of electric pain shot through me. "Ow!" I hissed, pulling the fabric away from my skin. I looked at my silhouette. My shoulders seemed to be shrinking, sloping downward. The shirt hung loose in places it used to be tight. I looked like a kid playing dress-up in his dad's clothes. "This isn't me," I muttered. I ripped the shirt off. Buttons popped and skittered across the floor. I didn't care. I grabbed an old, worn-out t-shirt from the back of the drawer. Soft cotton, thin. I put it on. It draped gently over my skin. It didn't hurt. I looked back at the mirror. The t-shirt clung to me, and because it was soft, it didn't hide anything. I saw the curve of my hip. I saw the slight puffiness of my chest. Panic rose in my throat, sour and metallic. I crossed my arms over my chest, hunching forward, trying to make myself smaller, trying to hide the softness. I was turning into something I didn't recognize, and the terrifying part wasn't the disgust. It was the relief. For a split second, looking at that softer, smoother reflection, my brain didn't scream wrong. My brain whispered, "Finally!" I shook my head violently to clear the thought. No. 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 I grabbed a heavy hoodie and zipped it up to my chin. Armor. I needed armor. 2 weeks later, I was driving my truck to the grocery store. I merged onto the highway, checking my blind spot. As I turned back, I shifted in my seat, and the diagonal strap of the seatbelt slid across my chest. It grazed my right nipple. It felt like someone had stabbed me with a hot needle. I bit back the curse, slamming on the brakes for a second before correcting. My hand flew to my chest, cupping the area instinctively. It wasn't just sensitivity anymore. I pressed down cautiously. Beneath the skin, behind the nipple, I felt it, a hard, rubbery lump, about the size of a marble. It was tender, it was growing. I pulled the truck over to the shoulder of the highway. Gravel crunched under the tires. Cars whizzed past me at 70 miles an hour. Shaking the cab, I sat there, hand on my chest, staring at the steering wheel. Dr. Martinez's voice echoed in my head. Breast tissue. This was permanent. If I stopped the pills now, the liver failure would kill me. If I kept taking them, this marble would become a golf ball. Then a tangerine. I looked down at my hands resting on my denim-clad thighs. The veins were less visible now. The knuckles were less jagged. My fingernails seemed pinker, cleaner. I wasn't dying. I was actually glowing with health. My skin was clear. My eyes were bright. But I was mourning. I was grieving for Edwin. I was grieving for the man who could wear a starched shirt without wincing. The man who didn't cry over lasagna. The man who didn't have marbles growing in his chest. I unbuckled the seatbelt, letting it snap back against the door pillar. I couldn't bear the pressure of it anymore. I looked in the rearview mirror. Who are you? I asked the eyes in the glass. They were softer now. The eyelashes seemed longer. The eyes didn't answer. But for the first time, looking at that stranger in the mirror, I didn't look away immediately. I touched my face. My skin was as soft as velvet. And God help me, it felt nice. I put the truck in gear and pulled back onto the road. I drove with one hand holding the seatbelt away from my chest, navigating a world that was becoming sharper, louder, and softer all at the same time. You look like the Unabomber. My sister Rachel didn't look up from the rack of clothes she was aggressively flipping through. Swish, swish, swish. The sound of hangers sliding on metal was rhythmic and irritating. I look comfortable, I lied, tugging the hood of my oversized sweatshirt further down over my forehead. It's 90 degrees outside. Edwin, you're sweating. I can smell you from here. She was right. I was standing in the middle of the women's department at Nordstrom, surrounded by pastel colors and the scent of expensive lavender perfume. And I was drowning in my own perspiration. The air conditioning here was freezing, but the anxiety radiating off me was generating its own heat. I felt like an intruder, a spy, every time a woman walked past with a shopping bag. I expected her to stop, point a manicured finger at me, and scream for security. Rachel, let's just go, I whispered, leaning in close to her. I can order stuff online, Amazon. Nobody has to see me. Rachel stopped flipping. She turned to me, her expression softening. She reached out and tugged the drawstrings of my hoodie. Ed, you ordered stuff online last week. Nothing fit. You said the waist was wrong. The shoulders were tight. She lowered her voice. You need to try things on. You need to find out what shape you are now, because you're sure as hell not a men's large anymore. I looked down at my boots. She was right. The men's large hung off my shrinking shoulders like a tent, yet pulled tight across my sensitive chest. It was a prison of fabric. Excuse me, can I start a fitting room for you folks? I jumped. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. A sales associate was standing right there. Her name tag said Monica. She was tall, poised, wearing a black blazer that looked sharp enough to cut glass. She looked at Rachel, then her eyes slid to me. I braced myself for the look, the confusion, the smirk. But Monica's face didn't change. Her expression remained professional, open, and utterly bored in the most comforting way possible. Actually, yes, Rachel said, grabbing a handful of hangers. For him, I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. I wanted a sinkhole, a meteor, anything. Monica didn't blink. She didn't look at my stubble. She didn't look at my work boots. She just looked at the clothes in Rachel's hand, a terrifying assortment of soft fabrics and floral prints, and nodded. Right this way, she said. Room 3 has the best lighting. The dressing room was a small carpeted box of isolation. The door clicked shut, locking me in with a 3-way mirror and a pile of clothes that terrified me more than any power tool ever had. I stood there for a full minute, just breathing. The air smelled of fabric softener and dust. Just do it. I told myself it's just cloth, it's just threads woven together. I pulled off my hoodie. The relief was instant. The cool air hit my damp t-shirt. I peeled that off too. I caught my reflection in the 3-way mirror. My body was confusing. My hips had widened just a fraction, but enough to make my boxers sit weirdly. My skin looked pale and soft. And there, on my chest, was the undeniable swell of development. Not muscle, not fat, something else. I looked away quickly. I reached for the first item on the pile. It was a blouse, a pale dusty pink color, silk, or maybe a high-end synthetic. It looked like water caught in a shape. My hands shook as I found the tag, size 12. I unbuttoned it. My rough, mechanic's fingers felt clumsy against the tiny pearl buttons. I slipped my arms into the sleeves. Oh, that was the first thought, just, oh. There was no friction, no scratching. The fabric felt cool and fluid against my skin. It didn't fight me. It glided over my shoulders, settling gently. It didn't press down on my sensitive chest. It draped over it, accommodating the tenderness instead of crushing it. I buttoned it up. I reached for the skirt Rachel had picked, a long, flowy thing with an elastic waist. I stepped out of my heavy, grease-stained jeans which left red marks on my hips and pulled the skirt up. The elastic snapped softly against my waist. I stood there, eyes closed. Physically, for the first time in 3 months, I wasn't in pain. Nothing pinched. Nothing chafed. I felt light. I opened my eyes. The person in the mirror wasn't Edwin the engineer, but it wasn't a woman either. It was something in between. But the jarring thing, it didn't look ridiculous. The pink of the shirt softened the harsh lines of my jaw. The skirt hid the narrowness of my legs and emphasized the new curve of my waist. I didn't look like a man in a dress. I looked like a person wearing clothes that actually fit. There was a soft knock at the door. "How are we doing in there?" Monica's voice. I don't know. I said. My voice was quiet. "Come on out," Rachel called. "Let me see." This was the hardest part. Opening the door. I put my hand on the latch. My palm was sweating again. If I walked out there, I was making it real. I was admitting that I needed this. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. I stepped out into the hallway of the dressing area. The carpet was plush under my socks. Rachel was leaning against the wall. She straightened up when she saw me. Her mouth opened slightly, but she didn't say anything. Monica was folding a sweater at a nearby table. She turned around. She stopped. She looked me up and down, her eyes scanning the fit of the shoulders, the drape of the waist, the length of the hem. It was a clinical, professional assessment. I wrapped my arms around myself, hunching my shoulders. It's stupid, right? I look like a clown. Monica walked over to me. She didn't stop until she was 2 feet away. "Stand up straight," she commanded softly. I hesitated, then slowly uncurled my spine. I dropped my arms. Monica reached out. I flinched, but she just grabbed the collar of the pink blouse. She adjusted it, smoothing the fabric flat against my collarbone. Fixing a button I had missed. Her knuckles grazed my neck. Her hand was warm. She stepped back and tilted her head. "The color works with your skin tone," she said matter-of-factly. "The structure of the blouse balances your shoulders. You have a good frame for this cut." She looked me in the eye. "It actually suits you." The air left my lungs. I waited for the punchline. I waited for the sneer. But she was just working. She was styling me. "You think I asked?" my voice trembling. "I know," Monica said. She turned to Rachel. "He needs a belt. A thin one, cognac leather, to define the waist, and maybe a camisole underneath for coverage. He needs..." She called me he, but she treated me like her. Or rather, she treated me like a human being who needed to be covered in fabric. I looked at Rachel. She was smiling, a sad, sweet smile. "See," Rachel said softly, "you're not a monster. Ed, you're just changing." I turned back to the mirror at the end of the hall. I saw the pink blouse. I saw the flowy skirt. I saw the beard shadow on my face. It was a mess. It was a contradiction. But for the first time since the diagnosis, I didn't want to tear my skin off. I touched the silk of the sleeve. It was so soft. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, we'll take it." "And the belt," Monica added, already walking away to fetch it. "Don't forget the belt." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I felt a strange sensation in my chest, not the pain of the growth, and not the panic of the transition. It was a tiny, flickering spark of vanity. I actually liked the shirt. And that terrified me more than anything else. The wind was the first thing to betray me. I stepped out of my truck in the medical center parking lot, and a gust of Colorado wind swept across the asphalt. It caught the hem of the long flowy skirt I had bought with Rachel. Whoosh! The fabric billowed up around my shins. I froze, my hands flying down to clamp the material against my thighs. The sensation was electric, and completely wrong. For 34 years, my legs had been encased in heavy denim or thick canvas. I was used to friction, weight, and protection. Now, I could feel the air moving against my skin. I could feel the temperature of the world. It felt obscene. It felt like walking outside without skin. "Just walk," I muttered to myself, my voice sounding thin in the open air. "Left foot, right foot. Don't walk like a linebacker." I started moving toward the automatic doors. My gait was a disaster. I was trying to take smaller steps to stop the skirt from swinging. But my boots... I was still wearing my Chelsea boots because I couldn't bring myself to buy women's shoes yet, clunked heavily on the pavement. Clomp. Clomp. I caught my reflection in the glass doors of the clinic. A tall figure, broad shoulders softened by the pink blouse, a long dark skirt, and a face that was trying desperately to hide inside a scarf. I looked like a glitch in the Matrix. The waiting room was a gauntlet. I walked to the reception desk. The receptionist, a young woman named Sarah, who had checked me in a dozen times as Edwin, the guy in the flannel shirt, didn't look up immediately. "Name and date of birth," she asked, typing. "Edwin Parker, July 12, 1989. Her fingers stopped moving. She looked up. Her eyes went wide. She looked at my face, then down at the blouse, then back at my face. There was a moment of silence that lasted 1,000 years. I could feel the heat rising up my neck, a burning, prickly rash of shame. "Say it," I thought. "Ask me if I lost a bet. Laugh." "Oh," she said. Her voice went up an octave. "Right. Checking in for Dr. Martinez." "Yeah." "Okay, have a seat, Mr. Edwin." She stumbled over the name. She didn't know what to call me. I didn't blame her. I didn't know what to call me either. I turned around to find a seat. Every head in the waiting room was turned toward me. An older woman clutching a purse looked scandalized. A teenager with headphones stared with open curiosity. A guy in construction gear, dirty Carhartt jacket, just like the one hanging in my closet, looked at me with a sneer that made my blood run cold. I chose a chair in the far corner, next to a potted fern. I sat down, keeping my knees pressed tight together, hands clenched in my lap. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Thump, thump, thump. I pulled my phone out, pretending to read emails. I wasn't reading, I was just staring at the screen, trying to block out the feeling of eyes crawling all over me. Then, my body decided to escalate the situation. The spironolactone, the diuretic Dr. Tons Martinez had put me on to block the testosterone kicked in. The urge to urinate hit me sudden and hard, a sharp pressure in my bladder that demanded immediate attention. I shifted in the chair, ignore it. The pressure spiked. I couldn't ignore it. I stood up. My knees were shaking. I walked down the hallway toward the restrooms. I knew where they were. I had used them 100 times. There were 2 doors. Men. A blue triangle. Women. A red circle. I stopped in the middle of the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Where do I go? If I go in the door on the right, I am a predator. I am a man in a dress invading a safe space. I could get arrested. I could get screamed at. If I go in the door on the left, sus. I looked at the blue triangle. I am Edwin. I told myself, I am a man. This is a medical condition. I belong in the blue room. I took a deep breath, lowered my head, and pushed open the door to the men's room. The smell of urinal cakes and bleach hit me. I walked in. A man was standing at the sink, washing his hands. He was big, heavy-set, wearing a Broncos jersey. He saw me in the mirror. He stopped scrubbing. He turned around slowly, water dripping from his hands onto the floor. His eyes traveled from my boots, up the long skirt, over the pink blouse, to my face. The silence was thick, heavy and violent. You lost, buddy, he rumbled. His voice was deep, echoing off the tiled walls. It wasn't a question, it was a threat. My throat closed up. I felt small. I felt ridiculous. I felt the fabric of the skirt clinging to my legs like a shameful secret. I stammered. He took a step toward me. He didn't raise his fist, but his posture shifted. He squared his shoulders. He was blocking the space, defending his territory. Get out, he said, low, flat. I didn't argue. I didn't explain the autoimmune disorder. I didn't show him my blood work. I turned and ran. I pushed back out into the hallway, gasping for air. My bladder was aching, but the fear was stronger. I couldn't go in there. I couldn't. I stood in the hallway, trembling. I was stranded, too afraid of the men's room, forbidden from the women's room. I was a creature with no habitat. I needed to leave. I needed to find a single-stall bathroom somewhere else, maybe a gas station, maybe home. I rushed toward the elevator banks, heads turning as I passed. I stared at the floor, counting the tiles. 1, 2, 3, 4. I reached the elevators just as the doors were sliding open. A group of people were coming out. I stepped back to let them pass, pressing myself against the wall, trying to make myself invisible. The last person to exit was a tall man in a grey suit, silver hair, expensive watch. He looked like a lawyer, or maybe a CEO, the kind of man who owned the world. He saw me standing there. He saw the skirt. He saw the panic in my eyes. He saw the way I was clutching my own arms. I braced myself. I expected a laugh. I expected him to shake his head in disgust. He stopped. He reached out and held the elevator door open with one hand. He looked me right in the eye. He didn't scan my body. He looked at me. After you, Mum, he said. The word hung in the air. Ma'am. It should have felt like an insult. I was Edwin. I was a guy. Being called ma'am should have been the final humiliation in a day full of them. But it wasn't. A strange, warm sensation bloomed in my chest. It started in my stomach and spread out to my fingertips. It wasn't sexual. It wasn't political. It was Ter's safety. He didn't see a freak. He didn't see a guy in a dress. He saw a woman who needed to get on an elevator. He was treating me with a default setting of politeness that I had lost access to the moment I put on this skirt. I looked up at him, stunned. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Going up, he asked gently, smiling, a genuine smile, crinkles by his eyes. Yes, I whispered. Yes, thank you. I stepped into the elevator, the fabric of my skirt swished softly as I moved. He let the door slide shut. I was alone in the metal box. I leaned back against the mirrored wall and slid down until I was crouching on the floor. I covered my face with my hands. Ma'am, I repeated to the empty car. My heart was still racing, but the rhythm had changed. The terror was fading, replaced by a confusing, terrifying, wonderful sense of relief. For 10 seconds, in that man's eyes, I hadn't been a problem to be solved or a target to be attacked. I had just been her. And God help me, I didn't hate it. Mr. Parker. The nurse called the name from the doorway. I flinched. It had been 6 months. 6 months of pills. 6 months of my body softening, rearranging, and healing. But hearing that name, Mr. Parker, still felt like someone throwing a bucket of ice water on me. It felt heavy, clunky. It belonged to a guy who wore steel-toed boots and didn't know what silk felt like against his skin. I stood up, smoothing down my skirt. It was a denim one this time, knee-length. Paired with a soft cream sweater, I walked past the nurse, keeping my head down. Dr. Martinez was waiting. She didn't look at her computer this time. She was sitting on her stool, hands folded in her lap, watching me walk in. Your levels are perfect, she said, skipping the pleasantries. The testosterone is undetectable. Your liver enzymes are normal. Biologically, you are a healthy woman. I sat on the edge of the bed. Physically, maybe, but I feel crazy. Doc. Why? Because I'm living in a haunted house, I said, the words tumbling out. I look in the mirror, and I see her, but then I open my mouth, and I have to introduce myself as Edwin. It feels like a lie. Every time I say it, I feel like I'm putting on a costume that's 3 sizes too small. Dr. Martinez rolled her stool closer. The wheels squeaked on the linoleum. Squeak. Edwin was a good man, she said softly. He protected you. He built your career. He kept you safe. But Edwin is incompatible with your biology now. You aren't killing him. You're just retiring him. She leaned forward. Who are you trying to be, really? Not medically. Who are you? I looked at my hands. My nails were painted a sheer nude color. They looked elegant. I don't know, I whispered. After the appointment, Rachel dragged me to a coffee shop down the street. It was noisy. The espresso machine hissed violently, kshht, and the air smelled of burnt beans and cinnamon. We found a small table in the corner. Rachel sipped her latte, watching me over the rim of her cup. You look like Grandma today, she said suddenly. I almost choked on my water. What's Grandma Michaela, in the eyes, and the way you're holding your shoulders. She put her cup down. Do you remember her? I know you were young when she died. I thought back. I saw flashes of memory. A garden. Strong hands covered in soil. A laugh that sounded like wind chimes. She was tough. She raised 4 kids alone on a farm, but she was the gentlest person I'd ever known. Yeah, I said. I remember she always smelled like lavender and earth. She was a survivor, Rachel said. She adapted. When the farm flooded, she planted rice. When the drought came, she planted cactus. She never fought nature. She moved with it. Rachel reached across the table and took my hand. Her palm was warm. You're doing the same thing. Ed, you stopped fighting nature. You're moving with it. She squeezed my fingers. Michaela. She tested the word. It hung in the air between us, shimmering. I felt a shiver run down my spine. Not a cold shiver, a warm one. Michaela. I said it in my head. Edwin, heavy, square, grey. Michaela, open, fluid, golden. It didn't feel like a new name. It felt like a key sliding into a lock that had been rusted shut for 30 years. I like it. I whispered. My voice was barely audible over the noise of the cafe. Try it, Rachel challenged. She nodded toward the counter. Go order me a muffin. Use the name. Panic flared in my chest. Rachel, no, I can't. Yes, you can. It's just a word. Go. The walk to the counter felt like walking the Green Mile. I stood in line behind a guy in a suit. My heart was doing jumping jacks in my throat. Thump, thump, thump. I rehearsed the line in my head. Hi, I'm Michaela. I'm Michaela. What if my voice cracked? What if I sounded like a drag queen? What if the barista laughed? The guy in the suit took his coffee and left. Suddenly, there was nothing between me and the barista. He was a young guy with tattoos up his neck and a nose ring. He looked tired. Help you? He grunted, grabbing a Sharpie and a paper cup. Yes, I said. I cleared my throat, pitching my voice just a little higher, softer, not forcing it, just letting the tension go. A blueberry muffin, please. For here or to go? To go. He scribbled on the bag. Then he paused, the marker hovering over the cup he was about to fill with water for me. Name. The world stopped. The espresso machine went silent. The chatter faded. It was just me, the marker, and the moment. I looked at the black tip of the Sharpie. I could say Edwin, it was safe. It was on my driver's license. But Edwin felt like lead in my mouth. I took a breath. The air filled my lungs, expanding my chest against the soft fabric of my sweater. Michaela, I said. It came out clear. It came out steady. Ma cerveza. The barista didn't look up. He didn't blink. He didn't check my Adam's apple. He just wrote, Michaela. $5. Michaela, he said, tapping the screen. I stared at the cup. There it was, written in black ink. Proof of life. I paid with trembling fingers. When he handed me the bag and the water, our hands brushed. Thanks, I said, and this time, I smiled, a real smile, one that reached my eyes. I turned around and walked back to the table. I wasn't walking like a linebacker anymore. I wasn't walking like a spy. I was walking like a woman named Michaela who had just bought a muffin. I sat down and placed the cup in front of Rachel, turning it so the name faced her. Rachel looked at it, her eyes filled with tears. Nice to meet you, she whispered. I let out a long, shaky breath, my shoulders dropping 3 inches as the tension finally left my body. It's nice to meet you too, I said. And for the first time in my entire life, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was just there, present, whole. I was Michaela, and I was going to live. 3 years later, the silence in my apartment wasn't scary anymore. It was peaceful. I sat on the balcony of my new place, a glass of Merlot resting on the small iron table. The Colorado sun was setting, painting the Rockies in brilliant shades of purple and burnt orange. Across from me sat David. He wasn't a doctor, he wasn't a therapist, he was an architect I'd met in the produce aisle of Whole Foods 6 months ago. We were debating the ripeness of avocados. David reached across the table, his hand large, warm, rough-palmed covered mine. I looked down at our hands. The contrast used to terrify me. Now, it just looked right. My hand was smaller, the skin smooth, the wrist narrow, adorned with a thin gold bracelet that caught the dying light. His hand was solid, anchoring me. "You went somewhere just then," David said softly. His thumb traced a lazy circle over my knuckles. "Brush, brush." I looked up at him, just thinking about how different this view used to look. He smiled, that crooked half-smile that made my stomach do a little flip. "Well, I like the view right now. The light catches your eyes." He wasn't talking about the mountains. I felt a flush of heat rise in my cheeks. It wasn't the hot, prickly shame of the doctor's office. It was a warm, liquid sensation. It was the feeling of being seen, really seen, and liked for exactly what was there. "Thank you," I said, leaning into his touch. I took a sip of wine. The liquid was cool and rich. I crossed my legs under the table. The silk of my dress shifting against my skin with a soft swish. I remembered the first time I wore a skirt in public, how I felt like I was walking naked, exposed to the world's judgment. Now I didn't even think about it. It was just clothing. It was just me. Later that night, after David had gone home, I decided to clean out the junk drawer in the kitchen. It was one of those tasks you put off for years. I dumped the contents onto the counter: rubber bands, batteries, takeout menus, loose change. And at the bottom of the pile, face down, was a hard plastic card. I froze. I knew what it was. My hand hovered over it. My nails were painted a deep burgundy today. They looked elegant. I picked up the card and flipped it over. Colorado driver's license. Edwin Parker. Dobe 0712. Fabulous night, yeah, 1989. I stared at the photo. The man in the picture had a square jaw. He had short hair. He was wearing a flannel shirt. He wasn't smiling. He looked tired. He looked like he was holding his breath, bracing for a punch he knew was coming. For the first year of my transition, I had hated him. I hated Edwin. I thought of him as the prison guard who had kept me locked up. I wanted to burn every picture of him. But standing there in my kitchen, with the scent of David's cologne still lingering in the air, and my body finally at peace, I didn't feel hate. I felt a profound, aching gratitude. I ran my thumb over the plastic face. "You saved me," I whispered to the photo. It was true. Edwin hadn't been a mistake. Edwin was the armor. He was the one who went to the gym to build the strength I needed to survive the illness. He was the one who built the career that paid for the doctors. He was the one who took the blow of the diagnosis so that I could be born. He was the chrysalis. And the chrysalis has to break for the butterfly to fly. But that doesn't mean the chrysalis wasn't important. I felt tears prick my eyes. Not tears of grief. Tears of reconciliation. I wasn't a man who became a woman. I was a person who had to carry a heavy shield for 34 years until it became too heavy to hold. And when I finally put it down, Michaela was who was waiting underneath. I opened the drawer again. I didn't throw the ID in the trash. I put it in a small wooden box at the back of the drawer, where I kept my special keepsakes. I closed the box. Click. I walked to the bathroom and turned on the light. I looked in the mirror. Michaela looked back. Her hair was shoulder length now, wavy and dark. Her face was softer, fuller. Her eyes were bright, alive, and happy. I touched my reflection. "I've got it from here," I told her. I turned off the light and walked into the bedroom, the silk of my dress flowing around me like water, moving effortlessly into the rest of my life.